Hello and a very warm welcome, viewers. You're watching India Fights Back with your host Kriti Mishra. The central government has asked the states to prioritize the beneficiaries who are due for second dose of COVID-19 vaccine and dedicate minimum of 70% of allocated vaccines from Government of India channel for the second dose. The states have also been asked to undertake a awareness campaign for reinforcing importance of complete vaccination with 2 doses of the vaccine. The Health Ministry has said that the CoWIN platform is also being modified to better reflect the changing needs of the vaccination exercise. The states can download a second dose due report to better plan the completion of vaccination of the target groups. And for more on this, I'm joined by Dr. Rohit Sarin. He's former director, National Institute of TB and Respiratory Diseases, and Dr. Anil Gurtoo, Director Professor, Department of Medicine, Lady Hardinge Medical College. Welcome to Lord Sabha Television, gentlemen. And Dr. Sarin, coming to you first, Centre has underscored the need to address beneficiaries waiting for the second dose. Your opening comments, sir.
I think it is quite clear that every vaccination has a particular schedule, and if that schedule is not followed, then the protective efficacy of that vaccination goes down, and maybe after some time the vaccination becomes redundant. So it is really very imperative that the second dose of the vaccination should also be taken by the individuals who've taken the first dose, so that they get protected to whatever the efficacy of the vaccine is there. You see, we say it's about 70% efficacious. So to have that 70% efficaciousness, it is important that you should have the second dose of vaccine. In case that individuals do not take the second dose of vaccine, a single dose is also protective, but it is protective to a far lesser extent. And the antibody protection also remains for a much smaller time frame. So I would advise all the viewers that if you have taken the first dose, please take the second dose. And if you have not taken the first dose, please go ahead for the first dose whenever your number or chance comes.
Absolutely, sir. And we know that vaccination forms an integral component of the 5-point strategy of India for management of the pandemic, including test, track, treat, and of course, COVID appropriate behavior. But Dr. Gurtoo, if you could please explain for our viewers, why is it so important to get the second dose of the COVID-19 vaccine?
So to carry forwards where Dr. Rohit Sarin just left. Now, when I take the first dose, what does that do? I take the vaccine now. Within minutes, the cells inside my muscle, they come actively, they engulf, they catch hold of that inactivated, killed virus in, let's say, Covaxin. And then they present that to another set of cells, what we call, these are the immune cells, the T cells. And when they speak to one another, it leads to a burst of activity. And that involves a lot of local cytokines and all that generate immune reaction, the first innate one. And that also activates the beginning of a long-term process. What is that? 2, 1, it activates a cell called the B cell. Now, broadly, the second immune response is in B cell and T cell. The B cell is the one that comes first, and it produces what's called immunoglobulin. Immunoglobulins rise and fall. First, IgM rises and falls within 2 weeks, then appears IgG, which lasts a little longer. They attack the virus directly in the blood and prevent it from locking into our cells. So that's the first, this thing that the first dose does, and that's all. So as Dr. Sarin said, if you were to be left just with the first dose, you are still protected, yes. However, that protection is incomplete in the sense, as he said, it could be around 60, 50, 60, 40, 60 variable in person to person, and not 80 to 90% as one would expect after the second dose, second week. So why is this so? Because you are just at the immunoglobulin generating stage after the first dose. The purpose of vaccination is not that. The purpose of vaccination is long-term protection, which is sterilizing specific to that virus, SARS-CoV-2 here. How does that long-term come? Long-term protection sets in through another phenomenon called the memory, immune memory. And that memory is carried predominantly in the T cell, also in the B cell, yes, T cell, which comes after the second dose. So the second dose merely boosts the effects of the first dose. First dose serves as a primer. It begins the process, sets the ball rolling. And the second one boosts it to the extent that memory develops and gets encapsulated within both B cell and the T cell. And they differently. So now you have two different mechanisms to attack the virus. Should one fail, the other takes on. So if my antibody levels turn out very low, it's very likely that my T cell, if it has been packed up with memory by the second dose, it will respond and kill directly or kill through the cytokines or whatever way. So that is why we say both the doses are important. One without the other is literally blind, lame. That's it.
Absolutely, sir. You've explained this very complicated process in a very, very lucid manner for our viewers, and I'm sure they're going to benefit out of it. But Dr. Sarin, there's another important question that troubles people. What if they've turned COVID-19 positive? Then when do they take their second dose of vaccine?
I think the guidelines are very clear on this, that if a person has developed, or the second infection prior to getting the second dose, then you have to wait. Then you see, normally speaking, these days for the Covishield, the government is recommending an interval of 6 to 8 weeks before the second dose is taken. And for the co-vaccine, it is 4 weeks before the second dose is taken. This is the normal dosage interval between the two vaccines, you see. But in the event that individual in between develops the COVID infection, then you see, first of all, it is going to take some time for that infection to go away and subside, which is usually within a span of about 2 weeks. So that 2 weeks period is gone. And beyond that 2 weeks period, again, we wait, because this infection has already, as Dr. Gurtoo says, has already brought about a challenge to the primed cells, and they are the memory cells are activated and they are producing, you see, the immunological response. So there is no need to give the second dose so at the defined schedule. So we wait. And how much is that wait? Well, it could be about 8 weeks time, some say 6 weeks time, after the individual has become okay from the infection. Then anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks of that, you could take the second dose of the vaccine.
All right, sir. And also talking about the second dose, Dr. Gurtoo, we understand that more than 90 lakh COVID vaccine doses are still available with the states and the UTs to be administered. Of course, India is trying to ramp up the production as well. But still, if the second dose is delayed, then what happens? What should the person do?
If by chance second dose gets delayed, nothing to worry. You take it whenever, as fast as you can. Now for the Covishield, which is that adenovirus, inactivated, non-replicating adenovirus, chimpanzee adenovirus based, up to 3 months, 12 weeks. In European countries, they're giving the second dose at 12 months. We are also giving it 6 to 8 weeks, as Dr. Sarin just said. So no problem if it gets delayed. Don't repeat the whole course. Just take the second dose as and when it's available and you can. Up to 12 weeks, very good. Beyond that also, you take it. Just take it.
Okay. Also, another important development that had happened, Dr. Sarin, was that the states have been asked by the center to undertake awareness campaign for reinforcing importance of complete vaccination with 2 doses of the vaccine. What are your suggestions in this regard? Because earlier we saw misinformation on the subject of vaccination and also vaccine hesitancy.
You see, as far as vaccine hesitancy is concerned, as on date, at least I would say that the fears are allayed. I mean, people are now fully understanding that yes, vaccination will definitely not cause them disease. In the very beginning, they were afraid that, okay, taking the vaccine, once you get the symptoms, maybe you are also getting the disease. Secondly, the adverse effects of the vaccine, which were normally seen, are now taken as acceptable because people realize that, okay, this particular vaccination, it is going to give you some effect or adverse effect in for 1 or 2 days. So that has become acceptable. Thirdly, you see, people have also come to understand that this vaccine is efficacious to the extent that the severity of the disease will get reduced, and definitely the mortality will happen in a much fewer number of patients. So, having understood this, people are now really anxious to take vaccination, and you find you see huge crowds moving into the vaccination lines. As far as the second dose is concerned, sometimes it is happening that the individuals are either getting scared of the side effects of the first dose, or the individuals have moved out or migrated out and they don't know where to go for their second dose, or you see, the individuals are afraid to go back to the health facility thinking कि वहाँ तो बहुत भीड़ है, and maybe you see they may catch an infection because they are not fully protected. Things like that, these are the fears which go into the minds of people. And when we really look at our statistics, we find that much smaller number of individuals have taken the second dose than who have taken the first dose. So that really tells us that yes, we need to convey to the people that to become fully protected, it is important to take the second dose, and within that defined time frame, please come and take your second dose. So that is the message which is going on. And as you have said that you see, states have been advised about 70%, 30% new and 70% for the second dose. I would say that that also is not sacrosanct. Every state will take its own view on that, depending upon availability of vaccine in that particular state, depending upon the extent of problem in that state. For example, now you must have also seen and heard in the papers and the news that Maharashtra as a state has really stated that, okay, we will first move on for 45 plus years of age before we, start on from the 18 years plus of age. Things like that, states take their own view on it. But yes, before we start expanding for the first dose, it is important that we should have completed the second dose for our population as far as possible. So that is, the technical take on, the second dose of the vaccine.
Dr. Gurtoo, you would like to add on the awareness campaign for reinforcing the importance of complete vaccination drive?
Yeah, I'll just sum up what Dr. Rohit Sarin has said. One dose is incomplete dosing. One dose is incomplete protection. You are still vulnerable. 2 doses, 2 weeks after the second dose, you are really protected. So if you have taken the first dose, don't hesitate to take the second dose. The second dose is the one that's going to give you the booster effect. So both are important to take. Yeah.
Absolutely, to fight against this pandemic, against COVID-19. But another matter of concern, Dr. Sarin, which is the overall levels of wastage of vaccine that must have reduced. But there are still many states which need to substantially reduce the wastage. What is your advice to them?
I think this is entirely related to planning process. It is a management issue. When we talk of after all, I think first thing to understand is why the wastage occurs. The wastage occurs because every vaccine vial has the vaccine dosages which are defined. So if that vaccine dosage which is defined is not finished on that particular day because the number of people who were supposed to come have not come, then that vaccine doesn't is not used again the next day. That vaccine has to be thrown away. So that results in vaccine wastage. Now, to take care of that, definitely one needs to ensure that at least those many people visit the vaccination centers who are or can utilize that particular vaccine content in that vaccine vial. And for that, you see, the government has always advised that yes, call a number of people more than what you anticipate, for that particular vaccine dosage. So either if you say at any particular site 100 doses can be given, we will usually call 110 or 115 people, so that at least of them 100 will turn up. So this is, I would say, more of a management. And sometimes you see, if because these centers are not too far away from each other. So if we find that at some center there are more number of people, whereas at the other center the only half the vaccine vial has been used, then we can always request the people to take their vaccine dose from the other center where at least vaccine is still available in that vial. So these are, some ways in which you could minimize the wastage. But yes, some amount of wastage will happen because it becomes very difficult when we are doing it for a larger country like ours, that some amount of wastage is going to be there. But yes, we should minimize it to whatever extent possible.
As you said, sir, that this is the question of planning and management. So, Dr. Gurtoo, how do we retrain and reorient vaccinators to ensure judicious usage of vaccines?
What they need to understand is that idealism, striving for ideal goal, will not work. Why? Because the situation is very chaotic. There is a supply and demand mismatch, and nowhere in the world we have enough vaccine stocks right now. So when ideal goals cannot be reached, we have to go for the next best, which is called optimization. We have to optimize between the supply and demand, which means using every drop of vaccine that is available for its proper use, not wasting. Two, making sure that everyone who turns up for the first dose does return for the second dose. These are the two ways in which we can optimize. And the third is, of course, gradually expanding the footprint of the vaccine so that we attain 60-70% of vaccinated population, and which is when we'll feel a bit safer. So optimization is what they ought to learn in their day-to-day work.
Optimization is the key. And another important aspect, Dr. Sarin, the government of India has so far provided more than 18 crore vaccine doses to the states and UTs free of cost. But states have also been briefed about procurement from the other than government of India channel, which has been opened in the liberalized phase 3 strategy of vaccination. How is it faring, sir?
That again is varying from state to state. And the economic condition of the state also comes into picture, when we talk of this. Then the prioritization on procurement from the government of India or procurement from, the vendors or manufacturers themselves. These are also issues which are there. Some states are saying that they will, in fact, even float a global tender for getting these vaccines as a way of procurement. They may get better prices. So, I mean, procurement is not a simple process. Procurement is complex, especially when one has to follow the procurement guidelines which are issued by the government of India. We also have, procurements taking place by the corporate sector. Corporate world also, industry is also making efforts that, okay, they will vaccinate all their individuals who are working with them. And these numbers may go into also lakhs. So, these are again, I would say, different organizations which are procuring. It's not only governments which are procuring, but so the vaccine manufacturers also then are trying to see where they are getting, a better profit margin. When they are selling at a particular rate to a particular organization, central government rates are different, state government is different, corporate world is different.
Yes.
So, I mean, now these all things will again really need to be addressed, because they're in this particular process, if it is not handled properly, it could even lead to some difficulties for availability of the vaccine at some places because of the cost difference between the vaccines.
All right, time for closing comments from both my guests. Dr. Gurtoo, India's vaccination strategy with the focus on second dose of vaccine. Your closing comments, sir.
Take the first dose, you will live well. Don't forget to take the second dose, you shall not die, even if you get the infection. So second dose is what will save you. Yeah.
All right, Dr. Sarin.
Well, I will say that vaccination is a priority, but of course, in the whole process, do not forget the other pillars that will protect you, and that is COVID appropriate behavior. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and keep a safe distance, because vaccine protection is going to be limited. Second dose is as important or even more important than the first dose. So having taken the first dose, definitely do not miss the second dose. Otherwise, you miss the bus and you can land yourself in problems. Thank you.
So do not miss the second dose. Do not miss the bus. On that note, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Gurtoo and Dr. Sarin. Well, that's all we had for you in this edition of India Fights Back. But before that, let me remind you once again, and as Dr. Sarin was also telling us, to stay safe from the coronavirus pandemic. Remember to wear a face mask and wash your hands and face regularly, and ensure that you maintain physical distancing whenever you're stepping outside. These simple precautions are all it takes to defeat the pandemic. Take very good care and goodbye.